Welcome back to Kids Political Radio. My name is Jen McMillan, and I'm here with my son, Charlie.
Hello.
And we are finally back recording, and we've got some exciting news for you. Charlie, do you remember what I was telling you about that I've been planning?
No.
So one of the things that we wanted to do this summer is learn a little bit while we were at home on summer break. So Charlie and I came up with a lesson plan of things that we wanted to do over the summer to learn about government and civic engagement before the next election. So we've got 8 weeks and we've got 8 topics, and we're excited to bring those and talk about those with you guys here on Kids Political Radio. So before we jump into today's lesson, which is the basics of American government, Charlie, one of the things that we wanted to talk about was current headlines. Charlie, have you caught any of what me and your dad are talking about at the dinner table?
No.
Have you heard any news lately about government or politics?
No.
Okay, so you're like most of Americans, because I know I'm weird and I follow politics very closely. But have you heard about Donald Trump getting convicted this week?
Yes.
Okay. Well, last Thursday, you heard about that. What do you know about it? What are your questions?
I just know that he went to jail.
Well, actually, no, he's not going to jail yet.
He went to the lawyer place.
To the courthouse?
Yeah, the court.
And, a jury of people that live in New York looked at all of that evidence and decided that he did what they accused him of, and they had enough proof of that they said that he was guilty of those crimes. So he won't technically go to jail. There's a couple of different options that they have. He could be put on house arrest or have to do community service, or he could go to jail. But we won't know.
Choice.
It's up to the judge, actually. Judge Mershon was the one that was in charge of the trial. And on July 11th, they'll determine what his sentence will be. So I know that it's a controversial topic, but I really wanted to emphasize to Charlie the one part that made me the most mad about this whole thing. Whatever you feel about politics and President Trump, President Biden, I still believe in the people that I live around. Like, I believe that our neighbors are good people, and if they're elected to a jury, that they're going to do their best job possible. And that's what happened in New York. And now you've got President Trump and all of his friends that are saying that those 12 people didn't tell the truth. Those regular people that took time out of their day are just liars. I think that's the part that makes me maddest.
So are they saying that he's guilty, or?
So the jury found him guilty.
So wait, are the normal people saying that he's guilty?
Yeah. And he says that they're wrong. It was all rigged. So if you gave
Some
up
people are just dumb.
That is true, Charlie. And that's, I think, why I'm mad.
No offense to anyone listening to this, but just it's a proven fact. We're all dumb sometimes.
We are all dumb sometimes. Our brains can be dumb. We can make bad decisions. But the fact that, President Trump isn't taking those 12 people seriously, and acknowledging that he did something wrong, and instead blames them on being part of this rigged conspiracy, just makes me very upset. So, all right, on to today's lesson. So here at Kids Political Radio, we are all sorts of excited for this year's election. And like I said earlier, one of the big things that we wanted to do this summer, Charlie and I, was explain just the basics of civics to everyone so everybody's got a good primer for the election this fall. So, this episode is primarily about our founding documents and just the very basics of what an American democracy is. In future episodes, we'll get a little bit into early American history. We're going to talk about the Civil War, as well as globalization and industrialization. So, I hope you stick with us for the next 8 weeks. And we will take any questions that you have, and I will answer them to the best of my ability. So, we've got a democracy, and ours is unique because we have a federal system of government, and that is where it's divided between the national government, so the president, Congress over in DC, and then individual state governments. So, we have conflicting rules sometimes because of that. Um, Another key part about our democracy is that it's divided into three branches to share all of that power: legislative, which is Congress, and then the executive, which is your presidential branch, and the judicial, which is our Supreme Court. Um, this was a check and balance system, is what it's referred to. If somebody gets too powerful or wants to do something too out of line with the norms, the other two branches of government can reach out and really, you know, put a stop or put a check on what they're doing, ensure that they are still following the Constitution. Um, if you didn't have this, there are democracies in the world that don't have a checks and balance system. Um, they power becomes more centralized, and that's kind of what we're seeing in some of our country now. Um, a lot of our Republican friends seem to want to put more power into the executive branch because they don't trust the other two branches of government. So, um, this is actually surprisingly relevant today. Um, our electoral system. Trying to think if there's anything else we really want to cover. Um, but really, our founding documents, the Declaration of Independence, which we'll talk a little bit more about during the um, early American life episode when we get into the history, but the Constitution really is a unique document. This is something that's been around since the beginning of the United States, and it was the first in its kind to set out rules and responsibilities for both the government and its citizens. It's a big master plan and explains how we should run our society. Um, with that, there were amendments made to the Constitution called the Bill of Rights. So after we set forth all of the rules about who was going to govern, um, and the executive, the legislative, and the judicial branch, how are we going to change this document if we don't like it? So it talked a little bit about changing the rules through amendments. Um, and that is always possible, but it's a 2/3 majority. So more than half of both the House and the Senate have to agree. So um, I encourage you guys to kind of play along with us and make your own family constitution. I won't lie to you guys. Charlie and I had a heated discussion, and I think he got a little frustrated with me. So I'm just going to summarize what we came up with, um, just to save peace in the household, I think. Um, so, with the Constitution, we have our 7 articles. And again, it's just laying out how we're going to run our government. So Charlie and I had this great conversation about running our household and who should be in charge and what their roles are. So, Article 1 of the US Constitution assigns the responsibility of making laws to Congress. That's the House and the Senate. So, our senators are Senator Dick Durbin and Tammy Duckworth. And then our representative is, I believe, Mary Miller, which I'm not super excited about that because Representative Miller and I don't agree on many things. But you know, I have called her office and let her know my opinions, and they have politely listened. Um, Sorry, that was a weird tangent. But anyway, at the federal government, those are who represents us. So Charlie and I talked about who makes the rules in our household. And at first, I think Charlie was afraid to tell me, like, well, you and dad make the rules. But essentially, we do. But I explained to Charlie that we always try to keep your and Liz's thoughts and opinions in mind when we make those. So we discussed that any new rules in the House have to be voted on by our full Congress. So that is the whole family. It can be argued that Lizzo doesn't need a vote or a representative because, she can't really talk yet. But she is still a full person, even if she can't speak yet. And we can make educated decisions on what she would like because we know Lizzo. So, what we decided to do is every member of the household has a vote in Congress, just like our representatives and senators do at the federal level. But Lizzo, since she can't utilize her vote, Charlie is going to be her surrogate, and he can make recommendations on how he thinks she would vote. We'll see how that works. Article 2 of our Constitution is the executive branch. Who's in charge of the office of president? So at the federal level, that is Joseph Biden right now and Vice President Kamala Harris. It's a little more complicated here in the McMillan household because, like I told Charlie, Dad and I both kind of make the rules and we can veto things. So Charlie decided that any executive decisions should go through both mom and dad and be unanimous if it's going to be an executive decision. A really good example of that might be what we're going to have for dinner. Charlie and I can argue round and round about whether or not we should have tacos for the fourth night in a row. But Tim and I get the final say on what dinner's going to be. So any big decisions that we need to make quickly, anything that affects the entire family, and any large decisions will go through the executive branch. Article 3. Article 3 in the U.S. Constitution is our judicial branch and the U.S. Supreme Court. And again, this one's hard to translate to your family. But again, we had a good conversation. So, in a small government, we all sometimes have to wear different hats. So, Charlie suggested that if we have an issue with another member of the family and think that we've been wronged, we can bring it to another member of the family, make our case, they can argue their case, and that third party will make a decision, which is very similar to our court system, except we're a lot closer. And my alliances with Charlie and Tim and Lizzo are a little bit different. But if we have an issue like me leaving socks on the ground, and Tim is very upset with me, he can go to Charlie and say, Charlie, I really hate that mom is leaving these shoes and socks all over the ground, and I think she should be punished for it. Well, I go to Charlie and I explain to Charlie that I did not leave my socks on the ground, that Lizzo moved all my socks out and dumped them in the hallway. So I shouldn't be punished for it. And then Charlie can make the determination if I am responsible for said socks and what my punishment should be. And he can make a recommendation. I think that one may need some more discussion at the dinner table, but I think that that's a fair way. I know that I don't always make the best decisions, especially when I'm mad. So to bring in a third party to make sure everything is fair, I think that's a good plan. Now, Article 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, those are really specific to the Constitution of the United States. And I don't think that we will be utilizing them much here in the McMillan household, but I do want to touch on them. Article 5 outlines states' powers. So in the state of Illinois, we have our own executive, judicial, and legislative branches. And they are separate from the federal government, but each state has its ability to create and enforce their own laws, but they also have to respect the laws of other states and the federal government. So that's what Article 4 is. Article 5 talks about the amendment process and that it ensures that over 2/3 of both the House and the Senate agree before any changes are made. So again, most people have to be on board. Article 7 or 6 is that federal law is supreme or higher than state and local laws. And Article 7 is how we ratified the Constitution. 9 states were required to enact the Constitution. Rhode Island became the 13th state to ratify the Constitution in 1790. So just a quick overview of our Constitution and how we adapted it to fit the McMillan household. So I hope that if you have any questions about the United States Constitution, or I guess government current events like President Trump's trials, write us in, send us a message on Facebook or send us an email. But I hope you gathered some new information about this and that our families and friends make their own family constitution. I think this is a really cool way for you and your family to better understand how the Constitution works in relation to our families, our governments, both local and federal. And with that, I'm going to sign off here soon. If you would like more resources and to figure out where I came up with some of this information, I'll put my resources in the comments or in the description. And one of my favorites is iCivics. That link will take you to a bunch of different lesson plans that break some of these things down into bite-sized pieces based on age level. So we got some of our information from them, as well as the National Archives and podcasts like The Daily from New York Times and NPR Up First. So if you have any other suggestions for where to find great information on this topic, let us know. Otherwise, we look forward to seeing you next week.